I'm Debbie Kaufman, the Manager of Professional Communities for ISPE. And on behalf of the entire task team and ISPE, welcome to ISPE's first virtual hackathon presentation. It's been an exhilarating and educational experience for each of us, and we're really excited to be here today. We want to thank Avexis for providing us the base for the problem statement, our esteemed judges, our awesome coaches, and especially our hackers who have worked really hard the last several weeks to identify the solutions that they are about to present. Team A, I'm turning this over to you now. Just let me know when you want me to advance the slides, and let's do it. Good luck.
Thank you so much, Debbie. And good afternoon, everyone. I would like to present you to Team A's business continuity plan. COVID has messed up more than just our fun summer plans, but also how we work effectively at our company, X's. We are compassionate, family-focused, team-centered, dedicated, and put safety first of our employees as well as our patients. And you can go to the next slide. These are the names of everyone that has contributed and gave their all to making our company the thriving and COVID-ready company. And without further hesitation, I would like to present you with our solutions. And you can go to the next slide.
There are currently more than 30,000 people in the United States and 70,000 people worldwide that are battling cystic fibrosis. CF is a life-threatening genetic disorder that occurs when a person inherits two mutated copies of the CFTR gene, and in turn, this damages their lungs and digestive systems. Approximately 1,000 new cases of cystic fibrosis are diagnosed each year, and the mean annual health cost for treating this disease in the United States exceeds $15,000. We are X's, a group of compassionate, team-centered, and dedicated innovators who realize the physical and financial burdens that cystic fibrosis can bring to patients and their families. And our main goal is to provide them with our innovative gene therapy treatment, Zystic 101. We have made groundbreaking progress in reaching this goal, but we are constantly working to advance our mission, always prioritizing the quality of life of patients and their families. Next slide, please. And a little bit more about our innovative gene therapy treatment, Zystic 101.
Our treatment is called Zystic 101 and is a lentiviral cystic fibrosis therapy. Lentivectors are gene delivery vehicles for the genetic modification of mammalian cells. They integrate into the host cell genome, providing a stable, long-term expression of the gene of interest. In contrast to gamma retroviral vector systems, lentiviruses transduce both non-dividing as well as actively dividing cell types, leading to highly efficient transduction of cell populations of interest. Studies in primary cultures of human cystic fibrosis airway epithelia as well as animal models demonstrate the long-term correction of cystic fibrosis phenotypes and low immunogenicity using lentiviral vectors. Our treatment uses third-generation lentiviral technology, spreading transgene transduction across 3 plasmids to minimize addition of DNA base pairs that might induce severe combined immunodeficiency. We as a company acknowledge that lentiviruses are a derivative of HIV, and we are committed to minimizing every safety concern in their use. Lastly, our therapy requires no apheresis, and after production can be sent to a clinical depot, kitted, and then directly injected into the patient. This will come into play later on when discussing our supply chain map and the assumptions we made in its design. Next slide, please. Now that you have a solid understanding of our therapy, let's briefly talk about the manufacturing process here at X's. COVID-19 has significantly impacted our supply and the availability of materials essential to our process. We will discuss our supply chain map in a later slide, so we have provided a manufacturing process refresher so that you can be familiar with what goes into Zystic 101 in our Durham facility. The first step is taking our proprietary HEC293 T cells from our working cell bank, growing them up and transfecting them with our 3 proprietary plasmids in a closed cell processing instrument. From there, they are transduced with the virus and grown up to the desired density. After the lentiviruses are harvested, they are sent to downstream operations, where the broth undergoes filtration and purification through standard methodologies. The viruses are concentrated, polished, and sent off to fill finish, where they are frozen and sent to the kitting facility. And now that you are aware of our process, Leah will review our areas of focus in our business continuity plan. Next slide, please.
So here I'll talk about the scope of our solution. The areas of focus we chose were tech transfer and GMP and PAI readiness. There's a lot of overlap between these two areas, especially considering the disruptions caused by COVID-19. The goal of our solution is to make sure we can effectively pivot in the face of these obstacles. We will be addressing the disruptions and our solutions for the following: supply chain, employee safety, employee engagement, which will encompass remote work and limited personnel on site, and finally, virtual audit planning. The goal of our solutions is to create a system that will address any major risks to the project timeline. It will also bring more control in the hands of our company to minimize external disruptions. Next slide, please. I think you're muted, Supriya.
Oh, she was saying at the beginning that she couldn't hear us. I don't know if she can hear us at all.
Supriya, can you hear us?
Yeah, I think she's having some technical issues, so we may want to pick it up and
I can do
one of
this
the other
slide.
teammates. Yep,
Yeah.
this is part of the bobbing and weaving of virtual
Yeah.
presentation.
Sure. So these are some assumptions and dependencies we've made throughout the process of coming up with obstacles that COVID-19 has presented us with and coming up with solutions with these problems. So on the tech transfer side, our major assumption was that large and major equipment had already been installed on the new East Coast site. And then on the CGMP and PAI department, our major assumption that was we implemented electronic QMS systems and policies and procedures, and we will go into more as to why we made all these assumptions and dependencies later in the presentation. Next slide, please.
Okay, so here's our supply chain map. A major problem that we faced during the early days of COVID-19 was a homogeneous global supply chain where we had only secured one or two overseas manufacturers to provide us with all of our PPE and single-use consumables, such as gloves, gowns, and masks. Thankfully, we had qualified all of our domestic strategic suppliers for CGMP production, and we had a confirmed supply of enough raw materials to carry us through to Q2 of 2021 when our non-GMP runs would be over. But we realized the need of a greater security in our supply chain for our future GMP orders that would support our operation up to the mock audit, FDA audit, and up to full-scale production. So, our two biggest goals in our plan were to establish redundancy in our stock and to decrease the distance between us and our strategic suppliers. We have defined our strategic suppliers as the key players in our supply chain, providing us with CGMP grade biologics, reagents, and single-use equipment. We determined that distance was the second biggest constraint, given that foreign countries are limiting overseas shipments, and this has been a rampant problem in the pharmaceutical industry. In order to establish redundancy in our essential biologics and accompanying equipment, we will have new supplies delivered by the time each key biologic has reached its half-life on the shelf. For example, there are only two major GMP plasmid producers in the United States, Aldevron and Brammer Bio, which necessitates that we place our order well ahead of time and have a backup order in case our manufacturer encounters a COVID-19 outbreak or other disaster. The shelf life for a plasmid is approximately 1 year. Initially, we would place an order for 150% of what we need for half of that, 6 months. Then we reach the plasmid's half-life 6 months later, and we order 150% of what we need from each supplier again. That way, we end up with 300% of what we need in the ideal situation and have plenty left over for the 6 months after in case our supplier is taken out again because of COVID-19 or another natural disaster. Additionally, we, along with other gene therapy manufacturers such as Avexis, rely on a small group of strategic suppliers mandating that we must maintain a deep relationship with each. Such suppliers are so vital to our enterprise that the failure of any among them can have a catastrophic effect. So, we plan to make procurement contracts with our strategic suppliers and guarantee long-term relationships, and through that, a steady, secure supply of our key materials. Now, you're probably still wondering about distance, and I'm just about to get to that. So in order to increase our proximity and avoid overseas shipping, we are moving any strategic suppliers from the EU to the United States where possible. That way, we can eliminate overseas shipping as a constraint for our most important stock. Our tactical manufacturers supply us with orders which we base more upon convenience and price than long-term contracts. So our focus is mainly directed towards having a constant supply of that coming in. As you can see in the diagram, our strategic suppliers for our biologics, lab equipment, and reagents all have only 2 or 3. But for PPE, since that is one of the most highly sought after materials at the moment, we are going to basically reach out to as many suppliers as possible and essentially take what we can get to the highest quality available. Between our strategic and tactical suppliers, there are market risks that must be addressed, and I will discuss this in the next slide. Next slide, please, Debbie. The highest risk in our supply chain is definitely PPE, specifically KN95 masks for our clean room staff that are always around our biologics. Due to the demand placed by healthcare workers as well as other industrial manufacturers, retail workers, and the everyday man, this specific form of PPE is very hard to come by right now. We have made the assumption that we have enough masks for 25% of our staff, and that we will continue operations until our next shipment with this stock. More about our plan to efficiently use our initial stock of PPE will come in the next slides. However, our second, third, and fourth highest risks are all other supplies used in pharmaceutical companies, specifically plasmids. We predict that the multiple vaccines being developed domestically will put a strain on the current manufacturers of these materials, and that we need to be mindful of this when we are ordering more equipment. We have deemed our lowest risk to be generic lab equipment used in upstream processes, such as pipette tips, spatulas, and graduated cylinders. These are a less specialized material in our process, and thus we don't expect this category to be as variable as the ones preceding it. And back to PPE, we'd like to now share our plan to efficiently use our initial stock of KN95 masks and surgical masks. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Victoria. So there are 2 main goals that we want to achieve with PPE, and that's first and foremost, we want to keep our employees safe and healthy during the pandemic. And secondary to that, but still extremely important, is we want to ensure the purity of our biologic product. And so the main issue posed by the pandemic with regards to PPE is obviously the inadequate supply of N95s, as Victoria was saying. And the problem is they're made to be single-use equipment, but even our healthcare providers can't secure enough N95s to be able to dispose of them after every use. And so since we're not going to be able to secure enough N95s to be able to give them to every single employee, as Victoria was saying, we needed to prioritize certain groups. And so that's why we elected our clean room employees who work directly with the biologics to be provided with them. And we assumed that we'd be able to get them for at most 25% of our employees just because of like the huge shortage that we're dealing with. But even though they are, those N95s that are approved by NIOSH are in extremely short supply, quality N95s don't necessarily need to be approved by the NIOSH. The National Personal Protective Technology Laboratory, which is a mouthful, recently assessed many different non-approved alternatives. Most of them were internationally manufactured, and the results showed that many of them exceeded the 95% filtration standard, and I remember most of them being even above 97%. So we can tap into those resources and expect to at least be able to get some N95s for our employees, even if they aren't technically NIOSH certified. That might be something we want to explore. But we also need to figure out a way that those employees can safely reuse N95s multiple times to preserve our supply. And that means finding a way to maximize mask decontamination without actually causing structural damage to the respirator. And a study that came out in late June from Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center and Harvard Medical School explored the use of microwave generated steam decontamination of N95s. And as shown in the figures you see on the right, they actually just placed the respirator face down on a glass Tupperware container, and they secured netting from a produce bag with a rubber band over the top of the container, filled it with water, and they just put it in your standard 1100 watt microwave for 3 minutes, and they got pretty remarkable results. Viral load was reduced by an average of 99.9999% across all of the assays. And the best part was that they tested it 20 times consecutively, and they found that the method didn't compromise respirator efficiency or fit. So at Exis, we can decontaminate N95s with just some glass Tupperware, a produce bag, a rubber band, and a standard microwave, the same stuff you would have for your lunch anyways. And actually, these results were accomplished using an MS2 bacteriophage model rather than the SARS-CoV-2 virus. And the bacteriophage is a non-enveloped ssRNA virus in a protective protein capsid, and SARS-CoV-2 is lipid enveloped, and that would make it even more susceptible to decontamination. So we would likely get even better results. Next slide, please. And when we compare this to other decontamination methods that have been investigated recently, since this has obviously been a hot topic, hospitals are trying to figure out how to reuse N95s as well. The microwave system is the most promising, as the mask can be reused many more times without affecting respirator efficiency or fit. As you can see when we compared it to UV light, hydrogen peroxide vapor, dry heat, and ethanol sterilization. But those of you who know about N95s might ask about the straps. The straps, even without a decontamination procedure, break down and compromise mask fit after an average of 5 dons and doffs. But we want to maximize the number of reuses and get all 20 wears out of those masks, or maybe even more, because they only tested it to 20, but we might very well be able to get more out of it. And Victoria is going to talk a little bit more about that solution. Next slide, please.
So, this is the technology that the remainder of our employees, just like me, would be wearing. We plan to use surgical masks with a filtration efficiency of 95% and a rubber band seal technology. This method is both simple, inexpensive, and effective in that only rubber bands and a surgical mask are required. The user loops together 3 rubber bands, properly applies their surgical mask, and stretches the middle rubber band over their nose and chin, and the other ones over their ears. This solution was developed by a startup called Fix the Mask, and a study was done at the University of Pennsylvania Perelman School of Medicine, which Jackson will discuss a bit more on the next slide. So as Jackson was alluding to, the N95 mask straps and headset secures, they don't last for more than 5 uses. This company is also developing a custom brace so that the rubber bands are not necessary, and our company will move to these for surgical masks and KN95 masks when they are developed. Next slide, please, Debbie.
And so this is the data from Perelman, the study they conducted on the rubber band system. And as you can see in the graph, the surgical masks outperformed OSHA standards for N95s in most categories. Anything above 100 for the port account pro metric is passing. The port account pro metric is just a measure of fit and respiration efficiency or respirator efficiency. The only exceptions were when the subjects were talking or bending. As you can see, there's a little bit of a poking through the border in the data there. But even in those cases, the majority of the subjects still did exceed the standard. And so these are pretty promising results. We want to conduct our own internal study to test both surgical masks and N95s with the new brace that they're implementing, and see if we can replicate these results and move forward with this innovative model. Next slide, please. And these are other ways that we're going to be addressing safety beyond PPE.
So, in preventing and preparing for a COVID-19 outbreak, making sure that everyone is as safe as possible when inside the facility is of the utmost importance. Our solution is to have someone in the HR department monitor government as well as state regulations regarding COVID and send out emails informing employees of these changes. These changes would include states added to the quarantine list, the state's number of rising cases, and daily facility updates. These emails would be sent out to their company email. And for more serious matters, such as someone in the facility testing positive for COVID-19 or a state lockdown, there would be a text sent out company-wide, similar to that of an Amber Alert. Lastly, there would be regular COVID-19 drills in which all non-essential workers would leave the facility in alphabetical order to maintain social distancing guidelines if the state were to go into lockdown or an outbreak inside the facility. This drill would have clearly marked exits around the facility so that certain rooms would have certain exits that would be required to use for the evacuation. This would also be mandated to entrance to the facility to ensure social distancing is upheld. And you can go to the next slide.
So there are other additional ways to prevent and preparing for COVID outbreaks. And we can improve communication by having additional hotline support systems for minor system maintenance issues during operation in facility. We can develop and provide hygiene instructions, such as proper hand washing techniques. And those techniques can be posted online as digital flyers, and it can also be printed out as physical flyers to be posted on hallways and operation rooms. And we can abide by government guidelines for maintaining social distance. We can have a social distancing bracelet alert system to detect personnel within distance of 6 feet. And this wristbands will vibrate or light up when coworkers are within 6 feet of each other. And some bracelets also have a contact tracing feature option where employers can see which of their employees has been in contact with others and registering when and how many times that contact took place. And we can also provide daily screening questionnaires for employees, including information on body temperature, any COVID symptoms, and travel history. And these questionnaires can be accessed by scanning QR code, which will be posted in emails and company websites. And employees are required to complete this questionnaire every day before they come into work. And for cleanliness, we can send out small size hand sanitizers for employees in the mail and have the employees keep it on them when they come to work. And this can help reducing contact by not having people touch the communal hand sanitizers. And we can also provide training that employees can access easily, such as WebEx training program for certified safety operation. Next slide, please.
We will also be using temperature monitoring kiosks that are completely contactless. They will be placed outside every entrance of the building so that people with too high of a temperature cannot come in. We also want the air quality of the facility to be monitored at all times in order to ensure that the health of our employees is a top priority. So we will be installing photocatalytic oxidation air purifiers in all our HVAC units. These will work in conjunction with a traditional high-efficiency particulate air filter or a HEPA filter and will not just trap bacteria cells, mold spores, and viruses, but will also destroy them. PCO technology is able to accomplish this because it uses UV light to stimulate a chemical reaction between highly reactive radicals, such as OH- and harmful pollutants, such as coronavirus. These pollutants will then oxidize and turn into two harmless byproducts, carbon dioxide and water. HEPA filters are only able to trap particles that are 300 nanometers in diameter or bigger, but PCO technology does not just trap them, but destroys them, and it can do so to particles as small as 1 nanometer. And it is important to note that coronavirus particles range from 60 to 140 nanometers in diameter, which are way bigger than that. Also, aside from a health standpoint, PCO technology has other benefits to our employees. Studies suggest that improving air quality of indoor air environments can improve employee performance and well-being. So when employees are breathing in clean, fresh air, they will be more awake and alert and can in turn be more productive, which will be good for the company. Next slide, please.
So our company is going to follow the protocol that will be on the screen shortly in regards to showing COVID-19 symptoms. There will be a trailer set up on the grounds where all employees will be mandated to get tested, as well as get tested again if they report symptoms. And Debbie, you can go to the slide right before this one. The company would be providing tests for all employees, thus the cost to employees would be completely free, hopefully increasing employees' willingness to get tested. To make sure that even asymptomatic people get tested, there would be regularly scheduled tests for all employees over a 2-month period. And after these 2 months, all employees should be tested, and the cycle will then repeat. Even though this way would be ultimately more expensive overall, it would ensure that even those asymptomatic people are not spreading COVID-19 to their other coworkers. If a test is negative, the person would be allowed to work normally, whether that's on site or at home. However, if a test is positive, a mass text would be sent out to all employees stating when the last time that person was in the facility, as well as a secondary email would be sent out to those who have been in close contact with that employee to get tested again. The people who have tested positive will be required to quarantine for 14 days, which after those 14 days, they must get tested for the COVID antibodies. If the antibody test is negative, a small care package would be sent to their residency, and they would be able to work from home for an extended period of time. If the antibody test is positive, we would allow that person to work from home for an additional 14 days only if they're an essential worker. If they are non-essential, they would return to work from home as usual. And to ensure that employees are aware of these new company policies, there would be an initial 2-day online training session, as well as a protocol review that would have videos as well as quizzes that all employees might face while on site. If there is a positive case, all employees will be mandated to retake this quiz and must receive a 95% or above to be exempt from retraining. The person who has tested positive will automatically have to redo the training before returning to work. And now we will pivot into remote employee engagement safely as well as securely. Next slide, please.
In order to keep engagement but also follow strict COVID-19 guidelines, we provided this flowchart to show the planning process and work schedule of an employee if they become ill or not. We want to stress that employees should stay home if they are not feeling well, and we will accommodate them by giving them extra sick days in order for them to focus on their health. In regards to employees that are not sick, essential workers will have to enter the facility every day, but we plan on having them work remote for an hour or two to either respond to emails or other aspects that they can do remotely, and then work 4 to 5 hours in the facility. On the other hand, non-essential workers will work virtual 8-hour shifts Monday through Thursday with Fridays off. Next slide.
Remote access to the company database and frequent virtual meetings is the way forward during the pandemic. How do we make this possible? First of all, staff members remotely access company database using a virtual private network, VPN for short. A VPN is like an encrypted tunnel to the company's servers, making it very secure. While using the VPN, a token key code that changes regularly will be required to access our company database. Only our staff will have access to the token key generator. The computers on the company VPN will be in a blockchain for more security. Data transactions amongst our staff members will also occur across the blockchain. To enhance frequent collaborations amongst our staff, while working remotely, our staff will have regular meetings via Microsoft Teams. This platform is highly encrypted and allows for various forms of sharing data and organizing meetings using Microsoft tools. You can also have departmental meetings via Microsoft Teams. These virtual systems allow the project to be completed on schedule while enabling frequent and secure collaborations amongst our staff and across departments while working remotely. Next slide, please.
To fix the problem of running tests on equipment remotely, we've decided to do a video stream with the vendor to assess the equipment without needing to travel there. And this will give SMEs the ability to work from home, but still get a detailed assessment of the equipment. This will also allow for specific tests to be run on the equipment, and we can see the test results through a video stream and accurately do our equipment qualification. We also need to train employees virtually, and we decided to use virtual reality technology to accomplish this. This allows employees to see the environment where they'll be working and to better and more quickly learn how to use equipment, as compared to when they have to learn online by reading SOPs. The expense associated with this solution will be the cost of purchasing VR headsets for employees. Next slide, please. Another way we're planning on safely organizing personnel is by decreasing the amount of people on site at any given time. So we're planning to operate at half capacity and allow employees to call in if they're needed. Also, we plan to have 2 or more people assigned as a backup for each role in case an employee gets COVID or needs assistance on site. We are also planning on increasing the responsibilities of engineers by having SMEs train them on new skills and equipment so that SMEs can be remote and continue to assist these engineers remotely without having an overcrowded workspace. Next slide, please.
To tackle the problem of dealing with facility emergencies with reduced on-site staff, we will develop a list of employees who live close by and which will allow us to call in personnel who can arrive on site quickly if needed. We will also have remote subject matter experts who will be working on alternating shifts available on call to assist with any equipment issues. This solution will overcome the local travel restrictions by allowing experts to provide their much-needed guidance remotely. As an alternative solution, we could also hire an engineering consulting agency to outsource technical solutions. This would be beneficial if a whole department has to be quarantined due to COVID-19, but in general would be a more costly option compared to in-house solutions. Next slide, please.
So lastly, we will talk about the solutions for the virtual mock audit pivot. The purpose of an audit is to ensure that the company is compliant with FDA rules and regulations. According to FDA guidance for industry under 21 CFR 211, the main elements of good manufacturing practices are our company's quality system, the facilities and equipment, the material system, and the production system. All of these aspects will be evaluated during the pre-approval inspection. In order to ensure an effective and timely pivot due to restrictions from COVID-19, virtual audit planning is critical. A successful virtual audit will be one that is as close to an on-site audit as possible. This way, our company will be able to observe any gaps in the system and address them prior to the FDA audit. We have identified 2 key elements of virtual mock audit planning to reach these goals: the information sharing tools and technologies we use with the auditor, and efficient implementation of the new technology to reduce any time lost and prepare for any roadblocks. Next slide, please. So as mentioned before, the goal of the virtual mock audit is to obtain audit evidence in a manner as close to an on-site audit as possible. This way we can ensure that the audit is just as rigorous. Some of the hurdles when switching to a virtual audit are communicating information with the auditor as well as data security. The 3 big elements needed for virtual mock audits are video conferencing, the electronic document sharing with read-only access, and a virtual tour of the facility. These days, video conferencing is easy to use for the most part and compatible with most devices. During the audit, the inspector will also require access to our company's documents. An electronic quality management system will give us the ability to provide read-only access for documents that the auditor requests. And one of the biggest hurdles of virtual audit is the inability to see the facility in person, requiring a virtual tour instead. All of these adaptations weaken our data security. This is why we need to take careful consideration of who is conducting the audit. We need to consider the security risks of using external auditors. Whether we use a small consultant firm or a large established agency, we need to make sure they are not compromised and that there are no conflicts of interest. Once we identify the service provider, we will conduct due diligence, including references and background checks. We will also establish an agreement about where the auditor will conduct the audit to ensure that their location is secure. Next slide, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Leah. As we all know, MTSAP, Medical Device Single Audit Program, issued guidance regarding remote auditing due to travel restriction with an emergence of COVID-19 and to find an alternate to traditional face-to-face audit. XS have planned to implement remote auditing that may be good, go to alternative, especially when we have a restriction and we may have any time temporarily closed border. With the best technologies, as Leah has explained, we have the best practices of planning, document review, fieldwork, interviews, and virtual auditing. Remote audit is an approach that is promising, especially consider that 1 or 2 days of travel can be saved per facility if the auditor may not be able to travel to the site. Coming to remote audit planning, in this discussion, we include the scope, schedule, and we make sure the auditor allocate adequate time. As we explain the similarities and differences between face-to-face audits to the stakeholders with the remote audits, we include the type of information and how the information will be shared using secure data encryption technology when enabling remote access to share proprietary information. Also, we make sure the auditor is aware of inherent risk in their work based on the audit methods and tools. We will be prepared to allocate twice as much time for remote audit plan meeting, document reviewing, and we are also aware of careful consideration of building effective strategies for reviewing data remotely that is discussed with auditees and ensure that the information provided with proper sampling strategies. To this, incorporate synchronous questioning during remote reviews is done by setting up video teleconference between the available subject matter auditor and the person tasked with implementing the program who has reviewed, as this allows for document to be shared and reviewed and the question and answer is given in real time. So coming to the audit day, for the remote, the concept of the standard day workday will not apply for 2 of 3 people involved, as they might be in different standard timing. So the audit will be scheduled and planned accordingly. And one more thing we want to go into is that we would plan on interview of 30 to 90 minutes with facilities program owners. A shorter 15 minutes interview will be conducted with designated personnel who have implementation responsibilities, and short, that is 10 minutes interview, will be conducted with selected general facilities employees who have responsibilities ancillary to the focus of the audit. This planning would help the internal auditor gain knowledge of the general culture. When more than one auditor is participating in an interview, a care will be taken to avoid talking over either the interviewee or other auditors. High quality review is possible with cloud technology, helps in documentation and reporting. Guide walkthrough of operational work areas will be used with appropriate technology that Mark will be going through in detail in next slide. We ensure staff have sufficiently robust internet services for remote access and proper backups. With a well-planned facility that prepared ahead of time and with digitized documentation, video images, and that spread weeks instead of concentrated into an audit period, this remote audit provides an opportunity to organize and confirm that all documentation for a regulatory inspection is readily available with secure technology for visual auditing. Thank you. Next slide, please, Debbie.
To elaborate on the facility walkthrough technology that was introduced, our plan is to have a single person or a small group of employees use a helmet-mounted GoPro, like the one pictured on the right, to live stream the facility to an auditor. Specifically, the GoPro Max 360 shown below has dual cameras with the capability to live stream a 360-degree view in HD. We would use volunteers who are interested in tackling this task and have a good personality, since they will be interacting the most with the virtual auditor. Our SMEs and top engineers will use Zoom or another video conferencing application to answer the auditor's questions in real time to try to as closely mimic an in-person audit as possible. To make sure the implementation of all this technology works as seamlessly as possible, we plan to have a practice audit before our mock audit as a trial to work out any issues. During this trial, we would involve the majority of personnel so that everyone can become familiar with the audit process. In addition, this would allow us to choose the employees who will be on the virtual audit team who perform the best and feel the most comfortable with the process. Through these solutions, we'll be ready to overcome any hurdle COVID-19 throws at us and ensure our success as a company long into the future. Next slide, please.
So with all this, we'd like to thank Avexis and ISPE for providing the problem statement, as well as a special thanks to our coaches, Steve Hall, Elise Kitchen-McKinley, Brody Stara, George West, Tony Lee, and Ryan Phillips for guiding us these past few weeks. Next slide, please.
Our recommended call to action for the company can be summarized by the list below. In order for our business to continue production, increasing redundancy of product and possibly reducing proximity between suppliers is a must. N95 and surgical masks will be used efficiently given their high demand. The facility's HVAC units will implement the photocatalytic oxidation technology to keep their air quality safe. The use of Microsoft Teams for project work and virtual reality training will keep the company employees engaged. And lastly, the virtual audit triad will focus on maintaining efficient communication and securing company data and records during and after the audit. We would like to thank you for taking the time to listen to our presentation, and at this time, we will be open to taking questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Team A. That was fantastic. Judges, this will be your opportunity to ask any questions that you have.
Quick question, would it be best to type our questions if there are any, or articulate
How about
them
I
here on the...
go, I would just say go ahead and articulate them on here, and we'll kind of go one by one just to give everybody a chance, and I'm sure it'll be a fluid, moving dynamic that we'll all bob and weave with.
Okay. I have a quick one that's kind of maybe not that important, but with the N95 Microwave Solution, is there like a piece of metal on the N95 that might blow up the microwave? Is that something we should be worried about?
Jackson, may you take this one, please?
No, there actually isn't. I honestly don't know. Maybe they make some that have metal, but your standard 3M N95 does not have metal, and that wasn't an issue in the study that they did. So we weren't very concerned about that because it didn't come up in the testing that they've done. And I mean, that's part of the reason we would also want to do our own internal study to make sure that we didn't run into any additional issues, especially if we're going to play around with the idea of using some of those N95s from international suppliers that weren't necessarily certified by the NAOSH. But it's not something that we're concerned with now.
Okay, good.
If I can add to that,
sure.
if I can add to that, George. So yes, the N95s don't have the metal strip, but surgical masks do, and that is why we are not implementing the microwave method for surgical masks. We would just continue to use those one every day.
Got it. Thank you for the answer. One other question is on the bracelets, the socially distant bracelets that light up. it sounded like they have capability to do contact tracing, but I'm guessing that would cost more and it'd be an extra feature. But was the plan to have that capability, or have the option to use it?
Anki, Amanda, or Lexi, any of you guys, would you be open to answering this one?
So I could take that question. So the contact feature, the contact tracing feature option is an option for Habit. So it depends on whether the employer would like to have that feature with the bracelets.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Also, I would just like to add that maybe we would want that feature because then if we know someone did get COVID, we can alert the people that were in close proximity with them and have them quarantine as well for the 14 days and then get them tested in our trailer that we would set up on the facility site. So that's where that can come in.
Also, to add on to that, the bracelets actually work via Bluetooth, so they'll be able to detect one another. The bracelets actually come customary with the contact tracing because it depends on how close you were to that person. And if you say that this bracelet was someone that tested positive for COVID, then you can see the other bracelets that were in at least 6 feet or closer to that one bracelet via Bluetooth.
This
Hey,
is
this is
Vivian.
Alice. Sorry, go on, Vivian.
Okay. All right, so I have a question on your supply chain, and I know you secured the redundancy and making sure that you had access to materials, but how are you actually managing that from a schedule? Because your ability to provide this life-saving treatment is critical. So you have reduced staff, you have essential workers, you've modified times. Have you gone to second or third shifts to try and compensate for the reduction in output? Or are you still having the same output?
Victoria, may you answer this one?
So is your question, Alice, sorry, Vivian, is your question more directed towards our supply coming in or our ability of our workers to produce to full production as we initially expected?
Your ability to produce.
Okay. I think somebody on the personnel actually would probably handle this one better, Ian.
Okay. Mark, Addie, would you be open to answering this one?
I think we were thinking that we would try to maximize the productivity with the employees we had, and we were going to try to implement alternating shifts. So having a second and third shift would be something that we could consider because that would allow our employees to remain socially distant but still maximize productivity.
Okay, thank you.
And the other, to add on to that, Vivian, actually, we were actually going to have like an engineering agency that like as a backup 24/7 on call so that if anybody got COVID in the facility and we had an absolute emergency and we had to have somebody come in, then we could just call the engineering agency, quickly explain to them, hey, like we would explain to them ahead of time, these are our SOPs, these are the people that we want to have come in if this specific personnel goes out, and then we would call them in and they would come in and fill in. So that's kind of what we were thinking if one of our, like if we had an outbreak in one department.
So you would have them pre-qualified?
Yes, we would have a backup team from an outside agency, pre-qualified, yeah.
Okay, I have a question. So great presentations. You all did a phenomenal job, and you all do a really good job with presenting in general. So I was impressed with that. My question is, I thought you all have some great ideas. You know, some of the ideas are more costly than others. So did you all put together a budget proposal on how much this would cost the company if we implemented all of these ideas?
This is more of an open-end question. More anyone can answer this one if they are willing to.
Okay, well, I guess I'll take it. So initially, the supply chain team as well as the safety team did do an itemized budget. So we had actually planned out like sourcing funds. So we assumed initially that we would have, when we won the competition, we would have a certain amount of funds given to us. And then we had made a itemized sheet of how we would continue to source funding. So we were estimating that about 30% we could source from grants from the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. We were also thinking of allying with other competitors in the area, kind of like the North Carolina Consortium. And then we were also going to apply to federal grants to fund our ideas going forward. But we never made like an actual budget sheet, just given that the problem statement was very broad and we had to make a lot of assumptions, and also that materials are fluctuating up and down all the time. We didn't want to get too specific with our scope with the budget sheet.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. It's Alice here. Again, I echo, well done, well presented, very well done. So Vivian and myself were very aligned in our questions. So I have another one, okay? All the changes that you're proposing or the suggestions, what's the overall impact on your schedule in terms of getting into your non-GMB batches, as you call it, and your subsequent PPQ batches?
So maybe I can just speak to this a little bit. So the way that we kind of designed our solution was to be able to basically eliminate external disruptions so that we had more control ourselves to the schedule. With any timeline that you might have, like you have a timeline, but it's no matter, even if there wasn't COVID, there would be issues that pop up. So our solution is more focused on, if there are risks, here are the major ones we foresee. Here's a system that we've built for our company design, we basically designed a system that would address any problems that might come up, just to minimize the effects on the timeline overall. That we did on some aspects kind of plan out, especially with like the safety and the equipment that we might need to make sure the employees are safe. We did plan a little bit about like what it would take to acquire those materials, as far as like 2 months lead time, 2 weeks lead time, whatnot. But we felt that was a little bit, the range was too wide for us to basically back up our assumptions on the timeline, just because things are changing so rapidly. I hope that answers your question somewhat.
No, it does. It does. It does. You were thinking about it, which is good. Well done.
Because yeah, to add to Leah, initially for all of the safety strategies, we had, okay, we'll be able to implement PPE within 3 to 6 months. Okay, we'll be able to implement the social distancing bracelets in this amount of time, and have COVID testing on site in this amount of time, and have everybody fully up to speed with masks and training in this amount of time. And then the coaches and judges, the coaches and us, we talked about it so much back and forth that we just came to a consensus that it would be really hard to accurately predict everything. And we felt that it would take away from the specificity of our actual solutions, if that makes sense.
It does.
One thing we didn't really have a chance to really talk about is, like, I don't know if any judges have any questions about our team dynamic or whatnot, but if you do, like, we also have, we'll love to talk to you guys about that as well.
So one more question on a portion that came up on non-essential personnel who would work from home, and if I saw it right, it said that those employees would work Monday through Thursday full time, but would have Friday off. What was the rationale for that recommendation?
So I can actually answer this one. So our thought process was that since they're non-essential, we want to limit as many personnel as we can get. We don't want to have as many people on the facility on site. So we thought that if they just work from home, are able to continue training, take courses, able to do as much as possible from there, then they can work Monday through Friday and then have, well, Monday through Thursday, I'm sorry, and then have Friday off as kind of a little reward to kind of keep them still engaged and not and more productive. That answers your question.
Also, to speak on that, to add a little bit more, we actually found a study that showed that shortened work weeks actually increases productivity by at least 30%. So we gave essential workers less hours, but they would be working the 5 days. And to make it fair for our non-essential workers, we decided to give them Fridays off.
Okay, so if they're working 4 days a week, 8 hours a day, they're not actually doing 40 hours a week. Are they getting paid for 40 hours a week, or are they getting paid for the hours that they're working?
Well, technically they are getting paid for how much they work. I mean, I know it's not completely reasonable, but we just figured that with our given situations or given restrictions, that there isn't as much we can do for specifically the non-essential. So
Okay, it's a generous benefit. I like the idea.
Is it optional though?
I'm
I
sorry,
was just gonna
optional.
sorry, go ahead, Ian.
You go. No, it's okay, Victoria.
Optional in the sense if you want to work that Friday, you can and be compensated for it.
Yes. So when we all talked about this, we said that non-essential workers would have they would be essentially they have to work Monday through Thursday, but like let's say that they're feeling sick. Let's say if they don't feel like they can, work as productively on the Friday, or they need to take one day off in the week. We thought about having that one day off be more flexible and that it would be an optional day that they could take off. So, yes, it is optional.
I have a question about your group. So how did you all determine who would focus on which areas of the strategy?
That is a wonderful question, Nicole. So these past 3 weeks have been really up and down. So initially, as you all know, we had 20 people and there were only 13 presenting. So what happened there was the initial team A1, which was the 10 of us, there were 10 of us. We focused on tech transfer initially. And so we divided that up into 3 groups: facility, personnel, and then supply chain and data security. And we came up with some solutions for that, set up the whole company, came up with our scope on the problem statement, came up with our therapy, came up with basically all the setup, and then we handed that off to team A2. And Lexi, if you want to speak to that, you can.
So I will speak on behalf of Team A2. So we had the same exact idea as Team A1 to start breaking up into subgroups. However, before we could even do that, we lost about 5 people in one day. So it was just me and my other trusty 4 compadres, and we were just like, what are we to do? Obviously, we're not going to get all of the GMP and PAI side ready in a week with the 5 of us. So we reached out to Team A1 and we're like, would any of you guys like to help us with anything? And they were more than understanding, and we actually collaborated as one big group kind of early. And I think Victoria can speak a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so Lexi basically sent me a Slack message and was like, oh my goodness, help, we've lost 5 people. And then shortly after, we lost 2 people. So there were 7 down. And that night, I was like, all right, emergency Zoom meeting. So we set up this enormous Zoom meeting with all 13 of us and the coaches. And we basically said, look, we can either look at this as a disadvantage or a huge advantage. And personally, I think we all came to found that we became more closely knit. We met with each other like literally every day for like 2 to 3 hours. We divided ourselves up into subgroups from there. Leah, Maitali, and Supriya all took on GMP PAI readiness. Lexi, Anki, and Amanda all took on safety. Quajo and Ian took on like communications and the electronic side of things. And then Mark, Addie, and Kim all worked on personnel. So what we did was we took tech transfer GMP and then we said, scratch that. We can really come up with a broad solution for the first half of our timeline, and we divided up into the biggest categories from there, and just we diverged and converged more times than I can count. And I really feel like we all became really close as a team during this whole time. So I'm really honest. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. To speak on how close we have gotten, there's some people on this team that now have my personal phone number. I text these people about every day. We're all connected on LinkedIn. So I think we actually became friends over this lovely project.
Any other questions? Well, we're at time. If there are no other questions, I want to thank everybody. Hackers, you did a phenomenal job. We're proud. And thank you for all your hard work. And judges and coaches, thank you so much for your support and your participation. And this has been absolutely great. Very exciting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well done,
Thank
Thank
you.
you, everyone.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Great job, everybody.
Great job.
Great
Thank you so much, Debbie.
Thank
Bye.
you.
And one more time, thank you to our coaches and Avexis for this amazing event. Really,
Yes.
thank you guys. This has been an amazing experience, and we are so grateful for it.
Yes. Avexis, thank you so much for your support too. Everybody's been wonderful. Thank you all.
Bye now.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, Team A.
Bye.
Bye. Thank
Bye,
you,
guys.
Victoria. Thank you, Jackson.
Thank you.